Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor, back from 2 weeks vacation. Thanks to Douglas Blair and Tudor Dixon for filling in for me. But I'm gone for 2 weeks. They find cocaine at the White House. They do a thorough investigation, come up with nothing, and the cover-up is complete. All in 2 weeks. It's the most efficient federal government operation I've seen in my lifetime. Joining me right now to dissect this and explain is Joe diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Wow, Joe, I had no idea the Secret Service was this good at, well, what did they do here exactly?
Exoneration, the Swift Exoneration Company Incorporated, run by the Secret Service. Obviously, the Secret Service has a conflict of interest. This is their territory to protect, and they didn't protect it. So they didn't find anything, because if they did, they'd have to explain even more. This is ludicrous. It's an investigation that never should have been conducted by them because of that conflict of interest. Their answers that they couldn't get fingerprints or DNA are absolutely absurd. Listen, they just got DNA off a pizza crust that was a few weeks old from a murder that's 30 years old. Give me a break.
And Joe, I've read that there were up to 500 people that they could have interviewed about this incident that may have had access to the space where it was found, but they chose not to interview them because they were afraid their civil rights might be disrupted. I'm sorry, what?
Well, as you know, all of a sudden, law enforcement agencies have become punctilious about the civil rights of Democrats, not so the civil rights of Republicans.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is this: the answers get more ludicrous, and the only thing that's more ludicrous are the answers from the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, David Weiss, about why there were no search warrants, why there were no Biden families, why the defense attorneys were warned about search warrants, why the statute of limitations was allowed to expire in Delaware. You know, when you look at this Justice Department and the federal law enforcement agencies that work with it, we are now in what they call a catastrophic state of collapse.
Yeah. But Joe, what bothers me most about, and you're absolutely right, 100%, and we focus on it so much on this program, but here's the problem. We have this deteriorating effect on the American people that they feel like there really isn't a truly fair justice system. And these stories keep rolling out day after day after day. And then something like this happens, and it's like they're so arrogant that they don't care what we think. They know they're just going to do what they want to do and get away with it. The fact that they don't care to even put up a pretense of fairness and justice is, I think, even more maddening.
It is, and that's because when you have an attorney general that is corrupt as Merrick Garland, you can get away with this. We are now in basically free fall in terms of the integrity of the Justice Department, the FBI, the Secret Service. The answers coming out of the Secret Service are so embarrassing that I'm afraid even the Democrats in the Senate will be unable to defend this when they do any type of appropriations or authorization hearings involving the Secret Service. But this is really now serious political corruption in law enforcement. We haven't seen anything like this in 100 years.
Yeah.
And the bottom, you know, since Teapot Dome, nothing like this since Teapot Dome.
Joe, you made a very important point here, and I want to circle back to it at the very beginning of our interview, where you said the Secret Service has a conflict of interest here.
Yes.
Which is obvious. If somebody smuggled cocaine into the White House, that means they got through one of the Secret Service's barriers.
Under their nose, so to speak.
Yes, thank you. And last I checked, possession of cocaine, even here in Washington, D.C., is against the law. Secret Service isn't really a law enforcement investigative unit or body best equipped for that kind of investigation, are they?
Not for these types of crimes. That's for DEA and the FBI, and actually the local Metropolitan Police Department, which could do a very good job on this. But here's another question, Larry. Just think about this. They can't tell you how that bag of cocaine got in there because they couldn't get into the lockers that all this stuff is supposed to be placed in. So how do we know that a letter bomb hasn't made its way into the White House at some point? How do they know when a letter bomb gets in there?
Yeah.
They say there are no cameras in that area. I can't believe that there are no surveillance cameras in that area. That's ridiculous. Next to the Situation Room. And if there are no cameras, when were they removed?
Right. Well, and Joe, you sort of brought me right into the next question I want to ask, because listen, this has to do with the Biden family. It has to do with the corruption within that family. Hunter Biden, obviously, with his drug habit, and frankly, just lawlessness in general in this administration. And we sort of, you know, we make jokes about it because it's cocaine, but this was a bag of powder, Joe. What if this was a bag of anthrax? What if this was incendiary? This is supposed to be the White House. And the Secret, 2 weeks, they throw up their hands and say, nothing we can do about it.
Well, obviously the answer is unacceptable, and it's a stupid answer, and because it's stupid because it's corrupt. When you can't give the obvious answers, you give the stupid answers, and that's what we have now. We have stupid answers from the White House and the Secret Service about why they can't figure any of this out.
Yeah.
That is absolute nonsense.
And everybody knows it. Everybody knows it.
Yes.
And so, given that, do we add this to the list for oversight? Do we add this for James Comer to deal with? Or does the Inspector General do something about this that oversees Homeland Security and Secret Service? I mean, it's just the list is endless right now.
Well, the Secret Service used to be in Treasury, but now it's under Homeland Security, under Mayorkas, who is absolutely politically corrupt. Janet Yellen, as I call her, Yoda Yellen, is now basically on a permanent vacation as Secretary of the Treasury, and she's incompetent when it comes to matters like this. So the bottom line is it's up to the Congress and the voters in November of 2024. This isn't going to get any better. It's only going to get worse.
I'd love to get an update for you on this plea deal, the supposed plea deal. We still don't have the details of this plea deal with Hunter Biden. That's kind of curious several weeks later, isn't it?
Well, they haven't released a plea deal for a very obvious reason. They don't want people to know what's in it. They want people to find out on the day of the plea when they can do nothing about it when it's too late. That's why the judge in this case in Delaware has a particularly high responsibility to examine the plea deal in detail, postpone any plea involved in this case, get to the details of it. She can do that in camera. That doesn't have to be done in public. But the plea deal should have been made public at the time the plea deal was announced. And the reason is, I will bet you, you can write this down. They are going, in exchange for this plea that he pleads to the tax accounts and this phony gun charge, he gets everything, all the other crimes that he may have committed, excused and immunity from all of those crimes.
Wow.
If that's the case, that's the end of any criminal investigation. By the way, what's the ongoing investigation that David Weiss keeps talking about? We haven't heard a word about that. What is it?
Yeah. Final question then. This judge, this is a federal judge in Delaware. There's no possible way this person got into the position and got behind the bench without in some way being cozy with the Biden family, right? I mean, that's just Delaware politics. Is there
everybody in Delaware knows everybody else. Right. David Weiss may be technically a Republican and a Trump nominee, but believe me, he knows the Bidens and he knows the two Democratic senators, Carper and Coons, who got him nominated. Believe me, this is a joke in Delaware. This is Mississippi 1964. The Biden name is golden to protect your Fanny from any investigation. This family is getting a pass. It's a national disgrace. It's the single most corrupt White House in history.
Governor DeSantis said that he will fire Christopher Wray on day one. President Trump has said the same. Is that enough?
Well, I think Christopher Wray's incompetence was known way before he was nominated. Victoria Tunsing and I personally went to the White House and told the Trump people, you are going to nominate a guy who is an incompetent, who cannot do the job. And they said to us, Chris Christie says he's the best thing since Dixie Cups. And we said, you know what? Chris Christie doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a fool. He's a buffoon. And guess what? We were right and Chris Christie was wrong. Although Chris Christie continues to defend Chris Wray, doing a great job.
Trump nominated Christopher Wray against your advice because Chris Christie told him to do so, and now Chris Christie is public enemy #1 against President Trump. You can't make it up. Joe diGenova, thanks for joining us. There's more to come on O'Connor tonight.